Chris Tye, our political reporter who's also been following this. Chris, your impression at these decisions from the jury?
Boy, you know, I was talking with some insiders over recent days who said, you know, the outcome that would really be complicated is if somehow Mike Madigan was able to untangle himself, but the confidant, Mike McClain, went down, and indeed it's the exact opposite. Apparently the jury throwing the book essentially at Mike Madigan on almost all of his counts, not one for his confidant, Mike McClain, who himself was found guilty in a past case, the so-called ComEd 4 case. So he has his own convictions in federal court elsewhere, but today he walks out of that courtroom with no more charges, no more convictions on his ledger. We should kind of zoom out here for viewers. The scheme, and there were a lot of technical terms there that they walked us through, from bribery and conspiracy to the Travel Act and wire fraud. The same sort of mousetrap that we talked about with the Ed Burke case, where these people who are holding high political offices are able to line their own pockets. And now, for the first time, we can say, with the juries backing us up, that they did line their own pockets by getting money from people who wanted to gain some political pressure down at the State House, namely ComEd and AT&T. Those were the schemes. As Pat Brady enumerated, this was a case with 5 schemes, 105 pages of jury instruction, 2 conspiracies, 60 witnesses. The tonnage here is a lot, and there's a lot to walk through, and it's still going on there up on the 12th floor of Dirksen. But really, the story is Mike Madigan did create an entire enterprise to line his own pockets. The feds said that he lost his way in his over 2 decades in power, blinded by profit, and a jury agreed with pretty large voice here today. And the way that this worked is that he would say to someone, hey, we are going to pay you and pay your law firm to do work for us, and in exchange, you will use your power down in Springfield to help carry the water for our causes. As we look here at the graphic that shows us all of the counts that came back from federal court today, count 2 was conspiracy. He is guilty. Count 3 was bribery, not guilty. That came with a 10-year possibility. Count 4, bribery, guilty, 10 years. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean that these years will all stack. Sentencing is for another day. Count 5, the Travel Act, guilty on that count from this jury of 8 women and 4 men. Count 6, bribery, guilty, facing 10 years there. Count 7, the Travel Act, not guilty, 5 years there against Mike Madigan. Again, this jury just coming back with this in the last few minutes. Count 8, wire fraud, guilty, facing a possibility of 20 years here. Count 9, wire fraud, also guilty, 20 years possibility for Mike Madigan. Count 10, wire fraud, also guilty on that, facing a possibility of 20 years in prison for that alone. On count 11, not guilty on that bribery count. He was facing 10 years for that one. As we continue to walk us through what the jury came back with today, count 12 was that Travel Act. He was found guilty, 5 years possibility attached to that. Count 13, guilty on another count of the Travel Act, 5 years possible there. Count 14, the Travel Act, guilty. So again, there were some here on the same type of count. The jury felt he crossed the threshold, and on others they felt he didn't. Count 15, attempted extortion, not guilty there. 20 years on the line for Mike Madigan. Count 16, the Travel Act, 5 years possibility, not guilty. So that goes off the ledger as we consider what his sentence will be. Count 17, not guilty of the Travel Act again. And as we continue here, the final few, count 18, not guilty of another Travel Act. On count 19 against Mike Madigan, we can tell you that that was wire fraud, and that came back also as not guilty. So Marie and Dana, this is the situation that is in front of us here. The judge is, I'm sure, talking as the jury has been thanked from those of us who have covered federal court here in the Northern District of Illinois. They start setting a schedule. When will they hear? Will we hear from some other experts as we talk about what the sentencing should be? Sentencing guidelines, of course, come into play here. But again, we're talking about a man who is 82 years old. Those counts come with decades, potentially either behind bars or in a lower lower threshold facility. The big question now is, when will he go away? For how long will he go away? But the big story for his confidant, Mike McClain, is no additional convictions. That is what we saw, again, sort of the parallels here in the last big federal corruption case in the Dirksen building, the Ed Burke case. There was his confidant in that case was also fully exonerated, but the big tuna in that case, to steal a phrase, was convicted by that jury. So a lot to chew on here in the hours ahead, and we'll figure out when Mike Madigan will have to serve this time and for how long.
Right, and it is interesting to note that, as you mentioned, Chris, the jury was deadlocked on all counts against his co-defendant, Michael McClain. And I know that we are throwing a lot of numbers at you, but just to recap, the jury in the Michael Madigan corruption trial has found him guilty of 10 of the 23 counts against him, not guilty of 7, deadlocked on 6. I actually wanted to correct my math. Deadlocked on 6, but guilty on 10, Marie.
Yeah, big number, a lot of moving parts. We want to let you know that court is over for the day. The judge thanked the jury for their service, let them go, and also said that they can speak to the media if they wish. We're not sure if that's happening, but we have cameras there in the lobby of the Dirksen to see if they'll speak, if we hear from Madigan or McClain or their attorneys, so stay tuned as we try to get some information from them.